Now, if we went along on these maps to move along, let's see, this is, yes, if we go to pages 80, 81, even though these maps are frankly all much of a sameness, but anyway, here you will observe that the big purple area is the Seljuk Turks. The Seljuk Turks were the first Turks who came to rule in their own right. A political characteristic of most of the medieval Muslim states, which is extremely odd and nevertheless factual, is that usually the Muslim states were ruled, had as their armies professional soldiers who were imported from beyond the borders of the Muslim countries and were not Muslims to begin with, but were imported as children, male children, boys, and brought up as Muslims, and then they became the armies, the basic armies of each place. And this was called the Mamluk system. Mamluk means possessed or owned, and so it's like slave soldiers. But it's a system of slavery that's very strange because it isn't chattel slavery, really. Rather, these people became the elite of the country. So, in other words, slaves were imported, and they were brought up as Muslims, and then they became the military soldiers, but they also became the commanders. This happened very early. The Caliph Mu'tasim, who ruled from 833 to 841, had a Turkish mother, and he imported the Turks and liked them, and that started a tradition that continued and continued and continued. Who were the Turks? The Turks were Central Asian people that lived way out in Central Asia. Today, if you look at the Turkic-speaking peoples, the major Turkic languages and peoples include the Turks of Turkey, the Azeris, who are Azerbaijani Turks, who speak, and those two groups, by the way, as well as the Turks of Turkmenistan, or the Turkomans, those three groups speak Oghuz, which is one variety of Turkish. So those three languages are nearly mutually comprehensible. Then there's the Jagatai Turks, who include the Uzbeks of Uzbekistan and the Uyghurs of Xinjiang, which is Chinese Turkestan. And then there are the Kipchak Turks, and those are the Kyrgyz, the Kazakhs, the Karakalpaks, the Tatars, and the Bashkirs. And all of the Turkish languages are somewhat mutually comprehensible because the Turkish diaspora has only happened in the last 1,000 years. And because of that, although that's enough time to elaborate them into different languages somewhat, there's also a great deal of similarity between all of the Turkish languages. And naturally, that has interested modern Turkey lately with the independence of the formerly Soviet-ruled Turkic republics to heavily go into that area and try to influence it. And the Turks' original homeland is in northeast Kazakhstan, toward the direction of Mongolia, both in Kazakhstan and beyond it to the northeast. And so the original ethnic appearance of the original Turks is that of the Kazakhs. And the Kazakh language is sometimes considered to be sort of the pure type of the Turkish language. But in any case, the Turks came from that area, and what is now called Turkestan, places like Bukhara, Samarkand, and so on, in Uzbekistan, all of that area was Iranian, not Turkish originally. But the Turks came in from being pastoral nomads and having the population surplus. They constantly migrated inward from the Central Asian steppes, and eventually their language prevailed. So today, the remaining Persian language is spoken in northern Afghanistan, in Tajikistan largely, in some isolated pockets in Uzbekistan and in Iran, of course. But everywhere else, the Turkish language has prevailed in that area, or one of the varieties of Turkish. And the Turks were then being imported as slave soldiers, but when the Seljuks came, starting in 1037, they captured Nishapur. They captured it in their own right, and they set up their own rule, which was called the Seljuk Sultanate. And here, in the purple color, it shows how far it extended when it was at its largest extent.